At best, the alien abduction phenomenon is a terrifying, traumatic experience. At its worst, well, we think they sometimes take people and don't put them back.
I lost my mother and brother to this trauma. He murdered her, then killed himself.
These women are being used as human incubators, with all their children stolen away into the night.
A 6-foot-tall entity of blue-white light paralyzed me, then bent down and said into my ear, "Hi, Steve." It knew my name.
We hear gruesome stories of experiments and dissections. Imagine dying on a metal table while paralyzed, surrounded by alien faces. It's a real horror story. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. I'm your hostess, Leslie Shaw.
I'm Stephen Shaw.
And tonight we're going to talk about some of Stephen's most recent experiences. He's been having some very bizarre experiences, and so have some of the other abductees we've been speaking to.
Yeah, it seems to be increasing in intensity. So for myself, I've been an astral projector for most of my life, and I know the difference between a dream and astral. But I've also been having these encounters 3 times so far in the very recent past, just even like a week ago, with this black entity that seems to be feminine and seems to have a slightly Asian voice. The first one was a few months ago. I was getting into bed. I got into bed, and I was definitely not asleep, and I felt this being get into bed next to me, and I knew Leslie was still watching TV. So anyways, I decided, no, okay, whatever. I don't want to deal with this right now. So I turned over on my left-hand side and just went to sleep. Woke up in the morning about 6, and I was going to get out of bed. I was just laying there, and this entity that had still been there said into my voice, into my right ear, said, "Husband," like a monotone feminine voice that had a slight Asian accent to it. So anyways, fast forwarding, just a short time ago, I was approached by about a 3-foot tall being. I was in my astral state, just hovering above my body, and then I went back in my body, and there was this dark being with the same voice that was trying to have a conversation with me. It sounded like English, and I was talking to it for a bit, and I just decided, well, I couldn't see the face, but I could tell the outline, about 3 foot tall, and it was dark, and I just leave me alone. So I swatted it a couple times with my left arm, and then it finally just left me alone, and then I got up out of bed. And then just about a week ago, I was hovering just above my body in bed and feeling very, very relaxed. Oh, I can do some astral projecting now. But before that happened, this dark entity came into the room. First thing it did was it was just basically appearing at the base of my bed, my feet. It sounded like it was like, playing with cardboard or papers, and it had the voice of Leslie. So for a couple seconds there, I thought Leslie was having problems. So anyway, so it wasn't Leslie, and then it manifested, came over in like a flash, went over, and it was in the bed next to me on my right-hand side. I said, "Get away." And then it basically went over to my left-hand side, and then I said, no more. I don't want to be dealing with you. I don't know what you are. And on top of that, recently we've been trying to get myself to go to Antarctica to see what's going on beneath the ice sheet.
In his astral state.
In his astral state, right? So I woke myself up in a dream, because it was something that I said, this is definitely a dream. So then I woke myself up, and I was hovering over my body, and I said, I want to go to Antarctica, see what's going on. So I projected out, and I was literally flying like you do in the astral state over this city, these multiple cities, and it was this beautiful, clouds in the sky. Again, it was always in the twilight. When you're in the astral realm, you see in the twilight state. It's not like it's dark, because you can make out everything. It's like a twilight state where it's well lit. Okay, and I met this guy that was also flying, and his name was it's a 2-syllable with 3 syllables. It was a really outlandish name. I wish I could remember it. But I said, I'm trying to get to Antarctica, but I'm having trouble getting through these walls. He said, well, you just have to remember that they're not really there, And so I tried, and I I kept on flying around, and then eventually I just basically lost power or interest, whatever, and then I ended up coming back into my body. But it's just as real as like that state, if you're aware and open, is just as real as my talking to you right now. It's just a different wavelength, but we all have the ability to travel. It's just that some people have done it more and maybe have a little more ability. And this is just a few of many things, and it just seems like it's been amped up for me. And maybe it's because I'm trying to pay more attention to it and I'm having more of an interest in it again. But, you know, an important thing is to do your chanting before you go to sleep. Chant the wishes in our book, the different, chants for the different chakras. Do that and set yourself up for it. Like, like for instance, I was teaching Tai Chi in one of my dreams just 2 nights ago. I mean, I did a long class in teaching Tai Chi. That's because I was thinking about Tai Chi, and I was, I was actually teaching it and doing it. And actually, I had the energy coming off my hands, which is really cool, which you can do with Tai Chi. So that's just what I had to contribute.
Well, thanks for sharing the recent experiences you've been having, and we'll be back in a few moments.
Yes. Leslie, you're kidding me.
What?
Our merchandise store is up?
Of course, my darling. All of our amazing concepts of shirts, mugs, and bumper stickers are ready to go.
No way.
Way.
Even my brilliant Egyptian concept that no one else ever thought of before?
Yes, that one too, and lots more. All at our new store at etsy.com/shop/abductions101.
Wow. I want a shirt and a mug and...
Well, Stephen, and all our curious listeners, just go to etsy.com/shop/abductions101 to see all of our unique designs.
I'm going there.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our show, Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. My name is Leslie Shaw, and this is my co-host and husband,
Stephen.
Stephen's birthday is tomorrow, so I hope all of you can wish him a happy birthday out there.
Yeah, the lovely 65.
Yeah, 65.
Doesn't everybody love that?
Officially a senior now. You can get the senior discount everywhere.
Yeah, I love it. Now I can start going at 3:30 and not feel guilty.
Anyway, tonight our guest unexpectedly had to cancel, and so we're going to do a little compilation show for the last few weeks, and also share some really exciting news we have.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Our publisher, John Christopher with Traveling Shoes Press, he's a small town publisher, and he helped us self-publish our book when we got started. He's also our layout guy. He received a letter from a publisher in the Czech Republic, and they want to translate our book into their language and release it there. So we were so excited to hear that.
Yep.
So we made a few little changes to the book, nothing huge, but we sent that off to the publisher, and just this last week we finished that project up and sent it off to him Saturday. So he has it now, and he says if it does well there, that they'll translate it into other Eastern countries.
Quite possibly Hungarian first and then Polish. And
Hungarian,
then, who would have thought that, that Spanish would be like maybe the fourth down on the list?
I know. We'd love to have the book in Spanish yet, but yeah, we're happy with anyone who would love to publish it in their language in their country.
Apparently, according to the publisher over there, that there is there's like a resurgence of reading in the Eastern, or relatively Eastern area of Europe. There's got a big market of like 16-year-olds to 35-year-olds that are reading again, especially like ebooks and even hardbound or softbound books. So there's to talk about tens of millions of people, and it is a very, very hot topic. So and our book,
of you who haven't read the book, this is what it looks like. It's who they are and what they're up to by Leslie and Stephen Shaw.
And we try to always get across that this is just not like a UFO book based upon, a couple of sightings that Leslie or myself might have had. This has a generational quality to it from my side of the family, going back at least 4 generations that we've traced so far, and quite possibly more. That's why I did 23andMe just recently, and we're waiting for those results. But so this is, our book links up the UFO phenomena with paranormal and how they directly connect. All right. So this is something that has had 20 to 30 years of research behind it, and with a scientific and a very logical look using the MOM system of means, opportunity, and motive like a detective would. So what we've done is link together what we have found.
Yes, we. This book is more about our theories as to who is flying the UFOs in our skies and what they want. We spent about 20 years, maybe a little more on Stephen's side.
My side more.
But 20 years together researching the book. And we came up, we compiled an enormous pile of data that we sifted through. And we carefully observed the actions of the UFOs. What are they doing? And we found that they are fairly consistent in what they do to people. And over the years, we realized that the regular theories about UFOs, that they're coming here from distant star systems and that they're just curious about us, that's why they're taking people for samples. We found that none of this was fitting the facts.
No.
None of those theories were fitting the facts. So we scrapped those theories, came up with new ones that do fit the facts, and wrote a book about it.
It's like the Occam's razor, like you say sometimes, Leslie.
Apply Occam's razor, right?
Apply, and which for people who don't know, that means is that what usually is the most direct and simplest explanation frequently is.
Usually is the truth.
And always like to with Maya Angelou, look at what they do, not what they say.
What they say.
It's their actions. I know we've had several very compelling and interesting guests that we'll get to in a little bit that really kind of support and also show that, yes, their behavior pattern is consistent.
Yes. They. It's true. We went to Contact in the Desert in June. And just before Contact, we had Karen Wilkinson as one of our guests. And that's a really compelling show. And then we met other abductees at Contact in the Desert, and we've had several of them on our show.
Yes, Sarah and Natalie.
And we met, we met the O'Learys through someone we met at Contact in the Desert. We're going to be having Sean and Chris O'Leary on our show, and that's a very famous case.
They have very compelling stories, and
we're very excited about that interview to
They've
come.
been on CNN, so they are actually fairly well known on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's a very compelling story.
Yes.
Yeah. Can't wait.
And then, of course, we also had Michael Forrest on, who came inadvertently through a person that we met at Contact in the Desert.
In the Desert, but 2 years ago. We met, was it Josh you met 2 years ago? Or
I met Josh both last year and this year, but I actually met Michael, which I didn't know, the year before, and actually got his book, his wonderful book on the Anunnaki and the alien connection. Did all of these wonderful pictures.
Amazing.
And so we had him on an interview, and what they're finding down there, what we found down there, we've been finding down there from Mexico all the way down to Peru in several countries are these artifacts that are dating back from anywhere from 2,000 to 25,000 years ago. And some of these glow in the dark. They use a certain type of patina using a fluorite compound, but they're finding the older they go back, the better they are, the artifacts, and also how they don't luminesce. And so that was a really, really interesting, because it shows that the human race has been around for a long time, and we've been very smart. And also the piece that we bought, as you've seen, sweetheart, it's got direct carvings of aliens and like spaceships, taking off.
I'll show it here, and I'll have them upload it for the show. You guys can see it here.
You can see it. Yes,
this piece we bought, the pieces that are coming out of the ground next to it are carbon dating at 25,000 years old.
Upwards, yes.
And this is this area of Mexico that they're pulling these out of. It's pretty close to Teotihuacan. It's more close. It's actually closer to the Tula site, but it's only about 100 miles away, 120 miles away from Teotihuacan. So we're talking about this region of Mexico, thousands of years ago, Sitchin thought the Anunnaki had a presence in the New World, in Mexico and Peru and Bolivia, and these carvings and that they are finding are amazing. They're proving Sitchin right.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely there are Anunnaki symbols all over these things. Egyptian symbols, Sumerian symbols.
Oh, the Ankhs are around all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. We recommend you listen to our show, which just dropped last week.
Right.
With Mike Forrest, and you'll find the link on our page. And visit his website too, aliencarvings.com, and have a look at these pieces. They're absolutely amazing.
Yeah, on our show, he took us through a tour of his own personal collection, which was really nice. You have to watch towards the end of that show to be able to see this, because it's really quite, wonderful. I mean, the stuff that Josh was carrying they're good buddies, at Contact in the Desert was amazing enough. And like I say, this stuff is real, and it's actually physical evidence that really proves our point.
And after that tour, the artifacts were not the only thing glowing green. We were glowing green with jealousy ourselves.
Yeah, green with envy.
It was awesome. So there's that. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about our book too, in that we couldn't relate our theories to people who knew nothing about the UFO phenomenon. So I had to assume that people would pick up the book that knew nothing about it, right? So the first chapter, we covered a lot of UFO history, almost in a bullet point kind of fashion. Like, then this happened, and this happened, and this happened.
It's too boring. Otherwise, it gets too boring, and then you have to go down too many other pathways.
And, we wrote on several mass sightings and several important abduction accounts.
Because the mass ones are usually the more compelling ones, right? Usually.
I think so. Yeah. A sighting by a single person, they can be mistaken, or,
unless it's a well-trained observer like a cop or a pilot.
But when 300 people see something, that's very compelling.
Right.
And one of the mass sightings, I actually didn't put it in the book because I heard about it, unfortunately, after we published.
Yeah, we did.
But it's a particularly fascinating event that happened in Michigan.
March 8th, 1994.
Correct.
Okay.
And the mitten part of Michigan that looks like part of a mitten. The UFOs crossed this whole mitten part from the northeast over to the west, heading somewhat south.
Yes.
They crossed 42 counties in Michigan.
And there's 84, and he crossed 42, so that's a big part of it.
Big percentage. And 300 people called law enforcement. There were 300 reports to law enforcement about UFOs in people's backyards, flying over their houses. And so many reports came into law enforcement. The law enforcement contacted the weather station on
Muskegon.
The Muskegon weather station on the east coast of Lake Michigan, down near like about Holland area, and Grand Haven.
And just north of Benton and south of the Ottawa counties.
Well, they were in Ottawa County. And,
they were in Ottawa. Okay.
Then I forget the county right below that, but most of the sightings, I believe, were in Ottawa County. And this was a particularly important sighting because when the cops called the weather station, he pointed his radar towards the phenomenon and managed to capture these objects on his radar moving at 72,000 miles per hour. And to this date, this is the fastest I've ever, that I know of, that's been documented.
This guy was a well-trained observer, and
he was a meteorologist.
And, so anyways, he started pointing his radar, which is not visible to the naked eye, right? But this object, or these objects that were moving in a triangular formation, they would separate and then move back into a regular triangle, like in the blink of an eye. They were responding to the radar. When he pointed the radar, they would respond and move to another side. He pointed at them, they would respond, but they'd always link back up
into a perfect triangle.
Perfect triangle.
Yeah. And the way he said it, they moved, to me it sounded like they were doing a grid pattern search, like they'd be in a triangle, and one of the corners of the triangle would move over, and then the rest of them would join it.
Right.
And then that one would move, the top one would move over, and those would join it. Almost like they're
classic
triangulating.
Classic grid pattern searching. And then guess what? There was a couple And this was 20 degrees. It was only 20 degrees outside, the meteorologist was saying. So it wasn't warm by any stretch.
Yeah.
It was still wintertime. And there was this couple camping, and they saw this object that was, they saw about thought it was about 2,000
Actually, they saw more than one. They saw a few UFOs.
Yeah, they saw the
them.
round one.
And they saw a column of water going up to the UFO. Actually, they thought it was coming down, but we think that the UFO was actually pulling the water up into the ship. And we think that they do this. They go on water runs, fresh water runs. And we think that that's what the triangulation search was doing. It was looking for the part of the lake that was ice-free. The top half of Lake Michigan at that point was frozen. And as they were doing their grid search, they were moving further and further south. And sure enough, they finally came to an area that was ice-free.
Yeah, and as we know, they can take H2O and turn it into fuel or a power source.
Well, that's actually something we can do too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not unusual for fresh water apparently to be utilized as fuel.
And this couple, remember the couple said that it looked like it was 20 feet wide, and this column of water that was coming up, it was being lit from the front and the back. Okay, so it looked like this beautiful waterfall, but it actually, everybody thinks a waterfall goes down, right? But in actuality, when they really looked at it, this was going up. Okay.
And this isn't the first time I've heard about a UFO stealing fresh water.
Yeah, in Pisco, right?
Yeah, Pisco, Peru. There's been some discovery there about some unknown pyramids, and this reporter, she went out there to meet with the mayor of Pisco to talk about these pyramids that they're discovering in the area.
Urabi
and
or something?
That by itself is interesting. But what they did, she met the mayor of Pisco near this lake bed that was all dried up, and he met her there, and he said he wanted her to help him with the problem they were having. They were having UFOs were coming. He said there used to be a great lake here, a grand lake, he said, but the UFOs has been coming, sucking up the water and stealing it.
Right. Local farmers have been actually, they were the ones who were complaining. So
they need it for their crops and their
animals. Yes, of course.
And this reporter was shocked by how just UFOs are taken as a given in the area. And that he thought maybe she could help him somehow communicate with the UFOs, saying, "Please stop stealing our water. We need it." So this isn't the first time I've heard about a UFO stealing water. We find that very interesting. As you may have known, you've been listening to our podcast for any length of time, you know that in our theory, we're not dealing with extraterrestrials. We're dealing with, we call them intraterrestrials.
Right.
These are breakaway branches of the human population that have been underground for thousands of years and to a certain extent have mutated away from us. But they're still human. And as soon as we applied this theory to our UFO data, suddenly everything just clicked into place and everything started making sense. This is why they take 90% Caucasians, because they are a branch of the Caucasian race. The Nordics are a branch of the Caucasian race, and we think they need our DNA because they think living underground has possibly made them less viable.
Right, and 52% of the encounters with what they call normally aliens are the Nordics.
Yes, yeah. Okay. People think it's the Greys that are seen most often, but it's actually slightly
more on the Nordic side. Mm-hmm.
And
anybody knows that any species or anything that spends time in a let's say a light deficient environment where there's less light, lower light, it is going to change your visual optic capacity. You're going to have to adapt to being in low light situations, so your eyes will naturally get larger. Certain things will be decreased because they're needed less. That's how nature works. That is where some things like where the origin of the species and Darwin, that's where that kind of stuff comes in. The adaptability of species is amazing.
And we think that some of the mutations that we've been hearing about with these, we call them cousins.
Yeah, they are cousins.
Or intraterrestrials. The mutations that we are seeing are exactly that of somebody who would move into a low light environment for many generations.
Right.
It's like Stephen said, their eyes are getting larger. Their hair, the hair of the alien book, talks about how an alien left a hair in this guy's bed, and he had it analyzed, and it's coming back human. Although a bizarre mix of human, like Gaelic and Basque, and
a subset of the Chinese,
and it's like 1% of the Chinese population, a little bit
and
of
it
DNA
tests
from there.
also clear.
But the hair, yeah, that's the hair, is showing a mutation, because there is no such thing as clear hair.
Yeah, not even albinos have purely clear hair.
Not humans, anyway.
Right, yeah.
And so this one hair proves that we're dealing not only with humans here, but mutated humans. And this is why they can breed with us so easily. And they are us.
And this also really leads into the next thing, like with Luis Elizondo with the ATIP program. All the money the government has spent on researching the brain and the similarities between people who can do remote viewing and people that are psychic and that have maybe telepathic abilities. They find across the board there's two areas of the brain that are hyperdeveloped and being more utilized. That's the caudate putamen, which is near the basal ganglia, which is kind of around about like where your medulla oblongata is. And then there is the part that spans both areas of the brain called the parahippocampal gyrus. And they're both involved with the thalamus, which means they lay down memories using a lot of emotion. And that's where the telepathy comes in, because telepathy is actually the most basic way of communicating, because every single memory we have is basically laid down with emotion, generally speaking, and it is a picture. That's why just think about how much different we would be if we were truly telepathic, which some of us are. You wouldn't be able to lie to people. And I think that's what a lot of what our cousins have developed. They've developed that, hey, it's a lot simpler just to be telepathic. What we're doing right now is like 5 steps away from telepathy.
Yeah, you don't have to learn 5,000 languages.
Yeah, that's why they don't. It basically is all picture. It's picture and emotion driven. That's all it is. That's how we communicate.
And I wasn't quite finished with my thought on the mutations, my darling. So let me get back to that. One of the other mutations we're hearing about is when women, everyone knows about this breeding program, right? Where women are being taken, impregnated, then 4 months later, they're taken again and the fetus is stolen. If you heard our show with Karen Wilkinson, you know all about that.
And Sarah, too. Yeah.
And Sarah and Natalie, for that matter. A lot of women especially, are reporting this phenomenon, of course, that sometimes the men are also privy to what's happening to their girlfriends or their ladies. They are taken with them, and they see them doing something to the baby, sometimes, and freaking out, So it's been seen by men as well, and it's been proven also in proven in that they proved that these women sometimes were in fact pregnant.
Yeah, ultrasounds.
And then the ultrasound proves it's there, and then later it's like their womb is vacuumed out. Unlike with miscarriages, it's like she was never pregnant.
Yes.
So these women are sometimes then taken onto the ships years later, and introduced to their babies, their toddlers.
They're hybrids.
And sometimes even younger. And then when they're coddling these children and they come back home, they're put back, they're actually starting, they get like a bioluminescence on them that can be seen under blacklight.
Yes.
They literally fluoresce. And so we were thinking the babies, the sweat they exude is actually bioluminescence. Another thing that is pointing to a race of troglodytes rather than a race of extraterrestrials.
Yeah, and we don't mean troglodytes in the sense of being stupid by any sense. It just means they're subsurface. They're subsurface. Yeah. But they're not living in caves. They're living in actual cities, because when they went underground because of the cataclysm of 12,850 years ago, they took their technology with them. That's why they had foreknowledge of this whole thing happening. And
that's why they're more advanced than we are.
Yes,
they didn't lose their technology to the cataclysm like we did.
That's right.
Anyone on the surface 12,850 years ago would have experienced the Younger Dryas comet impact. And that was just devastating. It broke apart and made a debris field from Georgia to Canada. and parts of Europe, obviously hitting parts of the Atlantic Ocean in between,
causing the tsunamis.
And causing 1,000-foot tsunamis all around the world, which then caused a lithospheric shift, we believe. Yes. And that would have been even worse. That would have just made them 2,000-foot tsunamis.
Yeah, and again, that is really explained by the evidence of things like the Perry Reese map, the crocodiles and the mammoths and like the camels and all the different mammalian and also reptile species that were in Siberia when it was more of a subtropical zone. And then you see also the evidence down in Antarctica, and you can see just how the shift had to have occurred. And by the way, the comet they say was 62 miles in diameter. So this was a big object moving at 40,000 miles an hour and hitting over what we now consider, like Leslie was saying, what would be considered like the Lake Superior area.
Yeah. And, asteroids tend to punch a hole in whatever they're hitting, but not comets. It tends to break apart.
Right.
And they hit both the ice sheet and the land and the ocean. Not both, all of the three things. They hit the land and the ice and the ocean. And what happens when a celestial body hits the ice sheet is it vaporizes gigatons of ice instantly into water vapor. So essentially the top half of the planet would have been covered in clouds.
Right.
And torrential rains, which is what most of the flood myths talk about from the Great Flood. That was one of the things that first put us on to this idea. I studied in college. I studied the Great Flood. I read the works of Fraser. He had done 500. He had found 500 separate cultures worldwide that had a flood myth in their ancient lore. And he wrote this book in the 1700s. And so since then, many more of these flood myths have been tracked down, and there's nearly 1,200 of them now.
As of Hancock's writing, there was 1,200.
Pointing to a worldwide shared event of some kind. And the only way you can have a flood that the entire world experiences is a celestial impact. Some kind.
And we know now that it actually was a comet because there's difference in the shock quartz between a meteor impact. It has a different striation markings than a comet impact. And so that's been proven by a group of scientists out of several different universities that have studied this. And, some that are West Coast based, I think like Berkeley or Stanford or something, and some back east. But so now we know where it hit, when it hit, and basically what it did. And because of the Usella horizon and the 1,100-year period that happened after that sent us back into a mini ice age that we've been coming out of. So all these things, if you lace them together, as far as like the provable stuff, it points directly to what happened, and also to how we reacted to it. All these things remember all the disembodied voices saying, "You better build an ark," like you say, right?
That's it. Most of these flood myths, nearly all of them, in fact, begin with them being warned, people being warned that this was coming, and told, by disembodied voices or an emissary of God or an angel. Somehow they're being communicated to that this catastrophe is coming. And so we think that 13,000 years ago, there was a civilization on this planet spread pretty much around the world that was a lot more advanced than we give them credit for in mainstream archaeology. They were certainly advanced enough to spot a comet coming with enough lead time to give them time to do something about it. We figured one of the stories that this king named Yima built a underground city, hollowed out an underground city capable of housing 20,000 people.
The Anatolian plateau?
Right, in the middle of the Anatolian plateau. We think it's this place called Derinkuyu that was discovered in 2014 by accident. And turns out it's this cavern city underneath the ground.
13 stories deep.
Yeah. Supposedly King Yima was warned that a cataclysm was coming, and it was going to be a winter like they had never seen before, and he had to build this underground city to survive the winter. And it was kind of like this Ark story where they had to take animals down there, and
Right.
And sure enough, stables were found in Derinkuyu.
Right. Yeah. Everything, even the chapels, rolling doors that could close from the inside. It was very well planned out, and it also connects. They later found that it connects like about every 15 miles or so. There would connect to another underground city.
Yeah, there's another one called Cappadocia or something.
Cappadocia. Yeah, Cappadocia. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's and that one supposedly there are tunnels that connect the two cities together. So
right.
That makes sense. You're underground for years and years and years. You can start tunneling even further and start making connections.
Yeah, so right. So there was foreknowledge. So having foreknowledge, you would have had to have advanced astronomical capabilities.
Astronomy,
probably better than we have right now. If they were able to predict
at least
it,
as good.
Yeah.
At least as good.
They could at least tell a year or two in advance. That's what they would have taken to make this underground city. Okay.
And that's so much of archaeology points to this exact thing happening, in that a culture starts by making stone tools and then later metal tools, and then they start building cities and, having science and traveling the planet. And we think that this happens in a slow, straight line, and normally it does. But this case, we did that. We had a nice normal evolution, and then we were laid low by the comet and had to start over. We were all shoved back into the Stone Age. And so this is why we see so many artifacts that make no sense, that are from prior to the flood, showing us to have been a fairly advanced race deep in our past.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, and, we know for a fact, at least from modern science, that Homo sapiens sapien, the version that we are right now, sitting here talking to you, have been around for at least 122 to maybe 130,000 years.
That's at least. Some people think a lot older.
It's been measured like over 200 or even a lot more than that. So we know that.
But at least 120.
Right. So, human beings, the way they are, we're curious and we're industrious, we're inventive. We're not going to be sitting around for 107,000 years just picking fleas off our butts, doing nothing.
That's what mainstream archaeology would have us believe, is that from our inception as being Homo sapiens sapien until about 13,000 years ago, so a total of 107,000 years, we supposedly sat around doing nothing, advancing in no way.
Right, exactly. So like I say, when you hear things that just connect up, for instance, like, the reason why they did Derinkuyu was because it was about a 4,500 foot elevation, about 300 to 350 miles inland from the ocean. So in that case, and also the material they were dealing with was relatively strong, but also soft enough to where they could actually carve it.
Yeah, volcanic rock. So it was actually relatively soft.
Right. So, but it was strong enough to as the way they did, which there is an amazing feat architecturally. Engineers saying, "God, I don't know, we could do that today." It was so well planned out, so that it was built to hold about 20,000 people, including animals. They even had a winemaking process down there. They were set to be able to survive the
long haul.
Yes, they were set to do that. So some people were told to go to high ground. Some people were told to build an ark, but this was a thing that was planetary in scope. And that we also then found, what was the other really interesting thing, was the genetic bottleneck. Now that we've gotten pretty decent with DNA and genetic markers and things such as that, because the humans were only 4 base pairs, so we're pretty easy to be able to manipulate. So anyways, we found that about exactly that same time, they call it a genetic bottleneck.
Yeah, geneticists were not really able to understand why, but it looked like the genetics of the human race were not diverse. Nowhere near as diverse as it should be, as they calculated we should be. And it pointed to that at one point in our history, our population was drastically reduced. We think as low as to a population of 10,000 individuals.
That's what the research is showing.
And that the entire population of the world, the surface of our world right now, has been regenerated from those individuals, those survivors.
We know there are pockets of people, especially like the Aborigines in Australia, that have been around for over 50,000 years, 50, 60,000 years. They're one of the oldest races on the planet currently. So we know pockets of individuals did survive, and according, of course, the Caucasians certainly survived too. But
Right.
yeah, we were definitely cold. Our numbers were cold down dramatically, and of course we lost most of the mammals and the big predators on the North American continent.
Yes,
And we lost,
they all died out at once.
and we lost the Clovis people.
And the Clovis people too.
Right.
The woolly mammoth, the mastodon, the saber-toothed cat,
The stilt bear,
the stilt bear, the dire wolf,
the American camel.
the American horse too.
Yep. We lost a lot of different species.
There was a giant armadillo called the glyptodon that is no more. And
Right.
the mammoth ground sloth managed to hang on to its existence for a couple of thousand more years. It died out about 8,000 years ago. But we believe the climate upheavals and the flood itself decimated the population to the point where it couldn't fully recover. Ever.
Yeah.
And the climate changes afterwards too were pretty drastic. What with
Right.
the way the Younger Dryas boundary is laid on top of the Ocello horizon shows about 1,100 years of straight climate upheaval. You wouldn't have been able to grow crops in the northern hemisphere for 1,000 years.
Yeah. You just take away the food supply and you take away the light source. First of all, the vegetables and the fruits are going to die off, and then your predators are going to have to die off because the herbivores are going to die off. So it would have been some would have died immediately. And of course, we know that Yellowstone, that there were some species that survived, and it became the 50 million buffalo that were on the plains.
Yeah, that they're the death of all these animals left an enormous gap in the ecosystem there.
Oh, yeah.
And so they just filled it with buffalo from Yellowstone and pronghorn. Any animals that were high enough elevation to survive the flood would have repopulated the plains.
Right.
But it was decimating to the northern animals, the big predators and the big herbivores of the plains.
Exactly.
And then because of the Coriolis effect,
explain that to people.
Yeah, because our planet spins to the east, our water currents for any really large body of water travel west along our equator. And that's what creates our ocean currents. The currents travel west, hit a continent, and then curl up and do a circle.
Right.
But at the equator, all the waters of the world are traveling west. And due to this, what's called the Coriolis effect, it's almost like the planet is spinning out from under the water, forcing it this way while the planet's going that way. But anyway, after the plains were flooded, an enormous floodplain of water, it would have been, by the Coriolis effect, it would have been forced towards the west. The trouble is that it would hit the Rocky Mountains. And so a great portion of the water, we think, got trapped there and became the Ogallala
Aquifer. Aquifer, right.
Yeah, not
right, aquifer.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. But anyway, but further south, as all this enormous body of water is moving west, the two mountain ranges, the Sierra Madres and the Rockies, have a low point where the Grand Canyon area is. And we think all of the water that was moving west at that area was able to move through this region.
It would have been a drainage ditch.
And we think the Grand Canyon was actually formed in weeks, not millions of years. We think so much water was.
It would have been formed in a much shorter period of time, just by the amount of volume of the water at the exact time between the Sierra Nevadas and the Rockies. Okay, so because of the Coriolis effect, it shows this would be the natural direction and the way it would have gone. And you can see with the layering, there's some good books out there that talk about, the man who walked through time and things like that. As far as you see the layering, and you see that it was carved out in a short period of time, not over millions of years.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another Wild theory on our side.
Yes, but it is backed up by some very observable facts. Okay,
Yeah.
it's just that people don't want to look at it.
Like the Siberian mammoths that are frozen. There's no way they could have survived in the subarctic zone where they are. They would have had to have been further south. And so Siberia itself was some 15 degrees further south in a temperate zone. And on the opposite side of the world, that meant Antarctica was further north. The portion of Antarctica that is Queen Maud Land would have been further north, outside the Arctic Circle.
Right.
Therefore, not covered in ice. And why there is the Perry-Rias map.
Right. There are a lot of things that back up what we're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely it doesn't, when things don't add up, you gotta look for what actually does make sense. So yeah, that's a big part of our book. We use the science to really back up what we're saying, okay, what we can observe. Right. Just like the ridiculous thing that's still going on in Egypt. I mean, a lot of people, even today in documentaries, they still attribute the Great Pyramids to Khufu, even though it's been found that those hieroglyphics were totally faked and they were done in the wrong order.
His cartouche was
upside down.
The cartouches of the day were written from top to bottom. And this cartouche that is an obvious forgery by Colonel Weiss.
Left to right.
Is from left to right. So it's in red paint.
Right.
It's not carved. And it's on a repair patch on part of the wall of the pyramid. And who knows when that repair patch was made. But definitely that painting, the cartouche painting, if it could have been DNA tested somehow, I'm sure they would have discovered that it was recent paint. And a complete forgery that has sent the entire Egyptology into the wrong conclusions. It's such a vile thing he did.
Oh, speaking of that, how about the recent research with the French geobiologists now, the ones that use LIDAR, ground penetrating radar, and then the stuff they've been finding underneath the second largest pyramid at sometimes it's almost 2 miles underground. They're finding these actual mechanical structures that look literally like power plants.
It looks very much like the infrastructure of a power plant.
Right.
Pointing to the Christopher Dunn's theory as being correct, that the Egyptian pyramids were actually created as power plants. And we've read his book, and we find his evidence quite compelling. And these new discoveries of the structures under the pyramids, 10 times greater, the size of these structures are 10 times greater than the pyramids themselves on the surface.
Yeah, it's like the tip of an iceberg, almost in a sense.
It's almost like, they literally are. They're like little pieces of iceberg poking out of the ocean, hiding an enormous complex underground. Once again, pointing to our underground theories about where our cousins went as being correct. Let's break for a quick break, my love.
Sure. Thank you. That we've pretty much near the end. We're almost at almost at an hour. Maybe we should just go ahead and wrap it up. One thing I wanted you to talk about is Carlotto and his finding the different cardinal points and how it shows definitively that the Earth does have pole shifts, or the poles do change because of the structures.
Let's take our break here.
Okay.
And we'll be back to discuss that.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Leslie Shaw, and I'm here to tell you about the incident that happened. My husband and I got married on my birthday, so we were celebrating both my birthday and our anniversary camping at Whitewater Campground. And the bank called me and said, "Are you spending all your money in a Texas Walmart right now?" And it's like, oh, no, we are not. And they had drained everything out of our account but 86 cents. That's all we had. And at the time, that was our only bank account. And so we were kind of stuck. And fortunately, the bank was great. And they said that they would refund it, our money, between 5 and 9 business days later. So I was trying to figure out what to feed us for that time period. So I remember opening the pantry going, what am I going to make? And then I'm a stained glass artist, and I had several pieces in a gallery at the time, and one of them sold, and we just got lucky. And I remember it was almost $300, and we were able to go grocery shopping with it, and at least feed us for the week it took. And the bank was great. It only took the 5 days, and we didn't have to wait the whole 9. But I would rather it didn't have to happen at all. And we're back, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yes, we talked this over on our show with Mike Forrest, and that show is last week's show. But the man we were discussing was Mark Carlotto. He's done some amazing work. He's an engineer who does geo mapping via satellites, using satellites. And he discovered that all of the pyramid city complexes in Mexico, they're consistent with each other as far as the alignment of the
cardinal points, right?
to each other, but they were not aligning to the cardinal points like these big structures usually do. Like the pyramids of Giza, for instance, they're aligned to the cardinal points almost perfectly. But the structures in Mexico were not aligning, and they were all consistent, like I said. But when he extrapolated Hapgood's theory of the lithospheric shift and put the magnetic North Pole in the East Hudson Bay, where it was before the last shift, then suddenly all of these Mexican complexes point directly to the pole on this their cardinal points.
Exactly.
Precisely.
And then other ones point to the
yes,
Greenland.
It was even longer ago. The Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek, the platform that has the trilithon stones. Now the trilithon stones are absolutely mind blowing. They are 880 metric tons each, and 880 metric tons.
And trilithon means there's 3 of them.
There's 3 of them, and they are placed on this platform 20 feet high. So the quarry is down this steep hill. So somebody dragged these 880-ton blocks up the steep hill and then placed them on top of a 20-foot high platform of other stones that were smaller but still colossal stones.
Without any crane marks or drill marks or anything
crane
like
marks,
that.
nothing. And nobody understands how these were built unless they were built by a superior technology.
The
prior to the flood.
Yeah, and it's called the Temple of Jupiter because that was during
on top of it.
During the Roman times.
The Romans built a temple.
So it looks like the original structure was built literally as a landing pad.
Yes.
Okay, that's exactly. Even the story of Gilgamesh talks about seeing the gods.
The place of the rocket ships or something.
Yeah, place of the gods, rocket ships, or something like that.
It's exact terminology. But
so, and again, using the science, okay, which is something that I know about, especially geology and things such as that, and acupuncture, mostly. But anyways, you find out that let's say when magma is being laid down, becomes lava, right? Well, it's got a lot of ferrite, it's got a lot of metal compounds that are, magnetic, all right. And when those compounds are laid down, they automatically, as they're cooling, they will point where the magnetic pole is at that time. So you can also trace these things to when certain like eruptions occurred and when the lava was being laid down, because they will also point to where the magnetic north is. So you can track these things, and it's infallible from the standpoint that it tells you definitively that was there. That's where the pole was at this time.
And the Baalbek location and Temple Mount, these are pointing to the pole where it was 50,000 years ago. And the Sun Temple in Peru called Ollantaytambo, that was aligned to the cardinal points when the pole was 100,000 years ago. So we're looking at structures that were built tens of thousands of years prior to what mainstream archaeology is saying about them. And these new discoveries coming out of Mexico just covered in Anunnaki symbols, and it's proving Sitchin right.
Exactly. And now even Ollantaytambo or
Ollantaytambo.
Okay, even that one, which is dating back 100,000 years ago, when the pole was in where the Bering Sea is now.
Bering Sea,
right? Okay, so like say, even that's within the time frame of Homo sapiens sapien, because we're talking about 122,000 years for what's safe to say that we've been Homo sapiens sapien, and that one is 100,000 years ago. So yeah, it's all within the time frame. It knits together very nicely.
Yes. And we think a lot of these structures could have been built on the foundations after the flood, rebuilt, I should say.
Right.
Because the flood would have been so devastating. It may have destroyed a lot of their works that were rebuilt later.
Right.
For instance, the Peruvian city of Caral Supe, that city is another one of these megalithic cities that supposedly mainstream archaeology is attributing to the Inca. But not too long ago, a big chunk of one of the foundations broke away, and they discovered this grass netting that was part of underneath the structure, and that could be carbon dated. And the carbon dating on that substance came back to 5,000 years ago.
Yes.
So this proves that there was a pyramid city building people in Peru and Bolivia and in at thousands of years before the Inca.
Way before the Inca. Even the Inca themselves said, when the conquistadors got there, said, hey, we didn't build this stuff. We didn't build the roads. It was here when we got here.
The Inca were a Bronze Age people.
Yeah.
And, no shame, but they were simply not capable of cutting 200-ton andesite stones into polygonal shapes and fitting them together so tightly that you can't put a credit card
at 14,000 foot elevation.
Yeah,
or the
12,400.
Oh, okay.
Still crazy high, 2,000 feet above the tree line.
Then you got Pumapunku in Bolivia, right? That's in the upper part of Bolivia.
At the
These blocks are just we would have trouble doing those today. Only with laser cutters. Yeah. Computer-driven laser cutters could we do that kind of stuff.
And they're supposed to have dragged these 200-ton stones with cables.
With cables.
Llama skin cables.
Right. They didn't do that. In fact, they look actually like concrete pours to me. I've heard more than one person say these blocks are so uniform in their materials. Right. And to me, having done a lot of concrete work and a lot of cement work, this looks like these were preformed. And then this finished off afterwards.
So in our theory, a lot of these flood myths end the same way, too. They don't just all begin the same way. A lot of them end the same way. And the end says that mankind was failing after the flood. Frequently, we were devolving into barbarism and cannibalism, and looks like we were on our way out. When a god comes to reteach the people civilization. And this happened all over the world.
Yeah.
Many, many times. And so what we think is that the people who retreated underground to survive the flood with their technology intact, their culture intact, and their knowledge intact, after a few generations, maybe a few thousand years, they started to take pity on us, on the people on the surface. We think they realized they needed us, they still needed us, and so they took pity on us partly out of their own selfish interests, or maybe they just felt a little survivor's guilt.
And human beings by nature we're kind of claustrophobic, so you're going to be the ones that also we're curious.
Yeah, but not if you've been down there 1,000 years.
Yeah, but there's always the explorers that want to see. They want to see what's up above. What's the top of the mountain? We have that in spades. What's in space? So you're going to have whole cultures that say they grow up, they hear these myths about the time before. Says, I want to see what it looks like. I want to see. So,
well, to me, it seems like a lot of people ask, well, why didn't they come back to the surface and after the flood? And the answer is just the cataclysm continued for a very long time.
Right.
1,100 years of climatic upheaval so drastic, I think they just decided to stay put where it's safe. And then in a few generations, it's almost like you would build a society of agoraphobes.
It becomes Yeah, and the surface becomes a myth. They were comfortable down there, with all the geothermal and the artificial light they were producing, and there's a lot of room. There's actually an ocean down there that's probably almost as big, if not bigger, than our total oceans. That now, with our advanced technology, we know that there's a huge subsurface ocean.
So another people think, is this the hollow Earth theory? And no, please, no. We do not think the Earth is hollow.
No.
We do not think there's a sun in the middle, and we do not think people live upside down on the bottom of the crust.
No.
We think that's silly, but we do, however, believe that there are large underground caverns threaded all through our crust, the crust of our planet, created by magma activity. Magma domes, when they'll fill with magma, pressure rise up in a big dome, and then the magma drains out of it. You have an enormous underground cavern. And we think they've installed themselves, a lot of the people that took refuge underground, we think they installed themselves inside volcanoes. Ancient extinct volcanoes have these enormous lava tubes threaded inside them, and they're above the tsunami line.
Right.
So that's why they went into Shasta and Mount Hayes and Mount, what's the French one? Buca something or other.
Yeah.
And then Mycenae in Italy. And, we think they're spreading around too. We think there are a lot of underground bases in cities where they survive. And they're launching their UFOs from these locations.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard thousands of reports of UFOs being launched somehow from inside our planet.
Right.
Either they're coming up out of lakes, they're coming up out of the ocean, they're coming up out of volcanoes,
sides of mountains.
A hole open up on the side of a mountain, and UFOs fly out. Mesas, the Archuleta Mesa, the ridge area next to Skinwalker Ranch, we believe, is another one of these bases, and the scientists up there are busy poking the bear up there, trying to get reactions to their experiments there. It's just so obvious to us that this is signs of residency.
Right.
It's not signs of visiting.
Right. And when, also too, one of the things that we also seem to have found is that for a long time, our cousins were happy with playing God. Okay.
Right.
The times when the gods used to walk amongst us. Well, yeah, you have advanced technology and your skin has changed because you've been underground for maybe 1,000 years. And, you're having the ability, much higher, stronger ability with telepathy. So you have different things that can make you appear to be godlike. I mean, you can look at pictures of people from 200 years ago to now. We've changed a lot just even in 200 years.
A lot of the flood myths, when they say that the god came to them to help rebuild their culture and their civilization, sometimes they flew in on like platforms, just like a platform that flies in and lands, a little Jetson kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this sounds more like technology to me.
Yeah, the Chinese have the thing about the Yellow Emperor, who became the Yellow Emperor, flying in on a fiery dragon. The stuff with Enoch and Ezekiel about going up into space and seeing the Earth, and going on either carpets or like a fiery vehicle would open up.
Right.
All this stuff that corroborates what people have been saying. The Hindus have many stories about the gods flying on carpets or fiery vehicles.
And speaking of ancient stories, there are many, dozens that we've found, and possibly even hundreds, of stories of civilizations retreating underground.
Yes.
Why? Why would you retreat underground?
The Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, for one.
That's another one, and the Zoroastrianism, and then the Book of Zohar, and there's just
the jinns.
The jinns.
The jinns in India.
There's dozens of these stories where people retreated underground, and
even the Indians hear about like the ant
Hopi.
The ant people coming up and saving them, right?
And ant people are interesting. And the Hopi word for the Star Brothers, their friends, were ant people.
Or Anunnaki, right?
Ant people translates to Anunnaki in their language.
Yeah, the word translates as actually, right.
I thought that's pretty
telling.
And People ask us if aliens are involved at all.
Right.
And, we can't be 100% sure that the Anunnaki weren't just advanced humans portraying themselves as aliens and gods, or if, in fact, they really did come from another planet originally.
Within our solar system.
And their stories about uplifting the human race maybe really did happen. And there is a little bit of data that suggests that we really were uplifted. You know this material better than I.
Yeah. That goes back to some of Jason Martell's work, who's kind of known in the UFO community, and he's a pretty down to earth guy. He also agrees with us about the Anunnaki and about Nibiru. Interestingly enough, that people think, the solar system kind of is around about Pluto's kind of near the end of our solar system. Not even close. The Oort cloud, where most of the comets come from, is over 200 billion miles away. And this brown dwarf that is supposedly where Nibiru is only 50 billion miles away.
Right. So it's still part of our solar system?
Still a huge part of our solar system. So anyways, it looks like about 300,000 years ago, again, according to science, that there was a cut and paste job done near the speech centers of our brains, near the Broca's brain area, which is what we, through Carl Sagan, we attribute with our ability to speak.
The neocortex, right?
Yes, part of the neocortex. And of course, the neocortex is the newest part of the brain. It's like a thin piece of cardboard that kind of goes all over the brain, But anyways, near the Broca's brain, it looks like there was a cut and paste job that gave us the ability to speak. I think they found that to build structures, you couldn't just use telepathy. You actually have to give your workers the understanding of blueprints, the understanding of something. That's why a written language was created, because you have to write things down to be able to remember. You can't do everything by telepathy. And so that's really why we have to be given the power of speech. And it looks like scientifically that can be backed up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
thank you everyone for joining us for this little recap episode and kind of a going over again of our theories. We appreciate your attention, and we'll be back with another one of our wonderful guests next time.
You can bet.
Yes. Thanks.
Ta-ta.